Hello everyone, this is Dr. Meyer here with a video for you on the Common-tone Diminished 7th chord, with yet another use for fully diminished 7th chords. Let's get started. Listen to this example from a Weezer cover of a popular barbershop piece, My Eveline.
My Eveline, say you'll be mine, won't you come and let me whisper in your ear?
Notice how the backup singers are singing that cool chromatic neighbor sounding chord right here. If we collected up all the pitches, we could call this chord a C-sharp fully diminished 7th chord in third inversion, right? But what the heck is that chord doing in B-flat major? Well, it's a common-tone diminished 7th chord. Listen once more to get that sound in your ear.
My Eveline, say you'll be mine, won't you come and let me whisper in your ear?
So what is this chord really? A common-tone diminished 7th chord serves as a non-functional chromatic chord that prolongs a harmony, like the B-flat major chord in our Weezer example. As its name suggests, the common-tone diminished 7th chord shares a single common tone with the chord that it's prolonging, like this B-flat here that's in all three chords. Often, this chord results from chromatic lower neighbor motion in the voices, not kept in common, so the spelling will reflect this chromaticism. While the common-tone diminished 7th chord is most popular in 20th century music, like barbershop quartets, it's also found in Romantic era pieces like this symphony from Brahms. Listen to the opening bars of his symphony in F major. Here are the jazz chords for these measures. The B natural fully diminished 7th chord definitely does not belong to the key of F major. So how else can we explain this chord? Observe how the F is being held in common through the preparation and resolution of this chord, a common-tone diminished 7th chord. In general, the tone held in common will be the root of the chord being prolonged by the chromatic neighbor motion. Check out the Roman numerals here. Since the fully diminished 7th chord has no function, we simply use an abbreviated label CT diminished 7. Listen once more now that you know the analysis, and see if you can hear that F being kept in common and prolonged here. Let's discuss some of the features of this chord. As we have seen, the quality is fully diminished 7th chord. That is, you probably won't find a half diminished 7th chord generally, because these chords are a result of chromatic neighbor motion. The tone which is kept in common is always the root of the prolonged harmony, like the B-flat in the Weezer example and the F in the Brahms example. Most often, this common tone will be the 7th of the fully diminished 7th chord, but it depends on how the composer chooses to spell the chord. For example, Brahms's common tone is the 5th of the chord because he chose to write A flat as the lower neighbor to A instead of G sharp. Notice that both chords are sounding the same, but if G sharp were the root, then F would be the 7th of the chord and the tone which we want to keep in common. So in general, we want to prefer a spelling that has the root of the prolonged chord as the 7th of the common-tone diminished 7th chord. Sorry, Brahms. Lastly, we are going to find this chord prolonging major triads for the most part, primarily the 1 chord and the 5 chord, or tonic and dominant respectively. A quick reiteration of spelling and voice leading is helpful here. Again, there is no function to this chord except that of a chromatic neighbor chord. So we're going to use CT diminished 7 in our Roman numeral analysis. You may do the same with jazz chords, or you can identify it with the root and quality as we normally would. In general, the common-tone diminished 7th chord will expand root position triads on 1 and 5, but you may occasionally see an inverted major triad being prolonged as well, so 1-6 or 5-6, for example. Again, a spelling reminder to use lower neighbor chromaticism when spelling the chords to get the preferred spelling of the chord. It helps with voice leading, and it's a bit easier to read in context. Now it's your turn to practice. Listen to the opening of Joseph Barnaby's Sweet and Low, and provide jazz chords and Roman numerals for the changes in the passage.
Sweet and low, sweet and low, in the western sea.
Pause the video now and take your time to find the common-tone diminished 7th chord. Here are the jazz chords and Roman numerals you should have gotten for this excerpt. Notice how the common-tone diminished 7th chord on D sharp is spelled with lower neighbors to G and E. That's the D sharp and F sharp in the second half of the first measure. And the C major triad and root position is the common tone, there in the bass voice. This is a textbook example of how the common-tone 7 diminished chord operates in tonal music. Listen once more and follow along with your analysis.
Sweet and low, sweet and low, in the western sea.
Let's summarize what we learned in this video. The common-tone diminished 7th chord is a fully diminished 7th chord, which prolongs a major triad through the use of lower neighbor chromatic motion. In general, the root of the prolonged chord is the tone kept in common during the prolongation. It is often the 7th of the common-tone diminished chord as well. When spelling and resolving, we want to follow the spelling of lower neighbor chromaticism and resolve those alterations as they tend. Lastly, we are most likely going to find these chords in 20th century music, like barbershop quartet music, but also in 19th century Romantic era pieces from Brahms, Schubert, Schumann, and the like. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.